Hello my friends, my name is Artur and I am an Estonian YouTuber. Have you heard about the Battle of the Shiloh? It's a very big battle but not known besides Gettysburg and Antietam. Compared to them it's like this small skirmish I guess. But it's actually a huge numbers battle. It's not talked about that much because, you know, Gettysburg is a huge damn battle and it decided the outcome of the war. But today we are going to watch what happened in the Battle of Shiloh. And it's from the channel Kings and Generals. They make a very good tactical videos. They give their own approach to the battles. And they also talk about the supply lines and all of that stuff, which I am very interested in. Let's see.
Antietam and Gettysburg dominate popular history. Other lesser-known battles were of course fought, each with their own tactical and strategic importance, and all with loss of life. The Battle of Shiloh, fought on April 6th and 7th of 1862, proved to be a pivotal one in the Western theatre of the war and set the stage for the eventual downfall of the Confederacy.
So this battle was a game changer, although it wasn't that big of a game changer. But I think you Americans actually know this battle, I just didn't know it.
By the beginning of April 1862, the US Civil War had been underway for almost exactly 1 year. Campaigning in the Western theatre of the war had begun in earnest in September of 1861 with the securing of Kentucky by Union forces, led by Major General Ulysses S. Grant's
Ulysses S. Grant, our hero! The drunken general who always wins.
Army of the Tennessee. The Union now directly threatened the economic heart of the Confederacy by stationing troops along the Mississippi River, the economic artery of the South. In response to this, and to protect Nashville, the Confederacy established Fort Donelson and Fort Henry Cumberland Gap.
But look at this, if this animation is any accurate, these forts are really strange. Just walls and empty insides, no buildings or anything. They just serve as physical protection. And of course they're really effective. If you have walls to protect you and if you have a higher shooting ground, it gives you a lot of advantage in battlefield, but it just looks weird. Just some dirt and some walls, but I mean these things win wars, so yeah.
Situated on the Cumberland River along the Tennessee-Kentucky border. At the start of 1862, the 27,000-man strong Army of the Tennessee began operations against Forts Henry and Donelson, with the strategic goal of dislodging Confederate forces and allowing further operations into western Tennessee and into the economic heartland of the Confederacy. General Grant had his army in position by early February, and a combined naval and ground assault was performed against the poorly defended forts, with their surrender occurring on...
I have a question. Do these cannons fire direct shots, like the cannonball flies direct, or does the cannonball form an arch when it flies? So here we can see that they're flying over their own men. I know it's an animation, but I still want to know if can they really do that? Were they like direct fire weapons, like muskets? You don't fire carved fire with muskets, you just fire direct fire, but the cannons were obviously different, so I wonder how do they work.
February 6th and February 16th, respectively. This was a significant blow to the Confederacy, with the loss of approximately 15,000 troops.
Whoa.
Furthermore, by February 25th, General Buell's Army of the Ohio had captured Nashville, Tennessee, 117 kilometers to the east of General Grant's Army of the Mississippi. Through March, General Grant, under the orders of Major General Henry Halleck, moved approximately 44,000 men deep into Tennessee via the Tennessee River, setting up a principal encampment at Pittsburgh Landing. Plans were also made for approximately 16,000 men of General Buell's Army of the Ohio, recently reorganized under Major General Halleck, to march from Nashville to link up with General Grant before combat operations would begin. Many troops from both Union armies were combat veterans, relatively well armed and supported by artillery.
It's weird in war how much it counts if the men have experience before in war. If they're combat veterans, they're less likely to panic, less likely to do stupid things in the battlefield, less likely to run. Whereas as new recruits, they panic, they run, they don't know what to do, they lose their heads, quite literally sometimes. Yeah, it matters a lot if your men are experienced.
In the field. While Major General Halleck was organizing Union forces in Tennessee, the newly created Confederate Army of Mississippi was being gathered around Corinth, Mississippi, 32 kilometers south of Pittsburgh Landing, under General Albert Sidney Johnston. Johnston had a reputation as an experienced combat officer and was considered among the Confederacy's top generals. Of the 55,000 CSA troops at Corinth, 40,000 of them began marching north on April 3rd towards the encamped Union Army. Johnson knew that he needed to strike against Grant's troops before they could be reinforced by Buell.
If you have 40,000 in your own country, in your own playground, as they say, against a smaller enemy, I see this as a victory. But knowing the tactics they used, it really doesn't matter how much men you have, because you don't have enough if they're shooting you and you're marching at them like Gettysburg. If the tactics are wrong, if the battlefield is wrong, don't matter how much men you have, they will just shoot you to pieces.
Buell's troops marching from Nashville. Although his troops were generally poorly armed and inexperienced in combat, Johnson hoped the elements of speed and surprise could help win a major
Speed and
victory.
surprise. Yes, speed and surprise, that's the two words I like together. Johnson, I like the way you think.
Knowing that the Union forces had not set up fortifications or entrenchments, Johnson's plan called for his troops to strike the Union Army and drive them to the west, away from the Tennessee River and away from the support provided by Union gunboats. To the west of Pittsburgh Landing lay a swampy stretch of land that would make it easy to destroy the Union Army. However, Johnson's march to the north was severely delayed by heavy rain, causing units to get stuck in the mud. His army was not in position to attack until the very early morning of the 6th of April, by which time his troops were tired and hungry due to poor rationing. Surprisingly, the Union forces were still not aware of the CSA army preparing.
Oh, they're not aware. We're getting the surprisal moment here, the one that I'm waiting for, because throughout the whole Civil War, no one used surprise moments. No one used these tactics I would like to use. They all just used brute force and aggressive attacks. Please use something that is of use to your men. Just don't send them to die.
To attack. General Grant, in a bid to avoid contacting the enemy and starting a major battle, had not posted any advanced scouts or patrols. By chance, in the early morning of April 6th, a nighttime patrol in force encountered advancing Confederate troops under the command of CSA General Bragg and began exchanging fire.
Oh.
The sound of gunfire alerted the Union Army that an engagement was underway, and they began to form battle lines before the Confederate forces could reach them.
Now the surprising moment is gone, unfortunately. The Union will dig in, and if the soldiers are dug in with thousands of men, it's impossible to take these lines.
By 6 AM, skirmishes were turning into more sustained contact, and by 9 AM, the Union soldiers at Pittsburgh Landing were either in the line or moving towards it. Union forces were deployed with the Tennessee River holding the eastern flank, and stretched westward, with the western flank anchored by General Sherman around Shiloh Church. As General Johnson had decided to personally lead his Confederates into battle, strategic command of the Confederate Army fell to his second-in-command, General Beauregard. Beauregard deviated from General Johnson's plan to push the Union forces westward, and instead opted to direct his army to attack in waves and attempt to push the Union forces to the east into the...
Attack in waves? That sounds so horrible, especially when your enemy has defensive positions and a better ground. They're dug in, they have something to cover, and if you attack in waves, it sounds exactly like Stalingrad actually. Wouldn't want to do that, wouldn't like it, it's quite stupid. The best thing right now would be to attack from behind or from the sides. Not on this side because they have gunboats here, but from the other side because they cannot protect their flanks. That would be the best way to concentrate your force to. Why don't they do it? Is it considered dishonorable? I heard some of you mention that these tactics I am talking about are considered dishonest. Well, screw that. If people want to live and win, they gotta use everything they have.
River. As the morning progressed, due to poor command, advancing Confederate troops became intermingled with troops from other units. However, the intensity and relentlessness of the attack forced the Union Army to fall back in attempts to form new defensive lines. General Sherman and General McClernand's troops retreated behind Shiloh Church. By mid-morning, on the eastern edge of the line of battle, flanked by General Hurlbut and the Tennessee River to the east and Sherman and McClernand to the northwest, troops commanded by Generals Prentiss and Wallace found themselves established in a field next to a road. The position along the so-called Sunken Road became a focal point for the Confederate assault through the day, sustaining anywhere from 18 to 14 separate charges. The fire coming into the Union positions was so intense that survivors described the sound of the mini-balls in the air like the buzzing of angry hornets, earning the place the name Hornet's Nest.
Imagine how much metal or iron is shot through air as bullets. They just shoot it all. They have tons of bullets, right? And most of them don't hit anything, right? So they're just till nowadays rusting in that swamp somewhere.
The point in the line held by General Prentiss, owing to the disorganized withdrawal of troops on either side, came under particularly heavy fire, including concentrated fire from 50 cannons, massed under CSA General Ruggles. This pressure was kept.
I'm so amazed that these guys did not collapse, because if you have a fire coming from all of the sides and you're halfway surrounded, these guys are pretty strong here.
On the Hornet's Nest for 7 hours. General Johnson was wounded while personally leading his troops in the area. He ignored the wound and bled to death as the afternoon progressed, becoming the highest rank.
Yeah, I talked about it in the last video. If you get wounded by a musket bullet, that bullet is big as hell. It will tore a hole inside of you. You cannot really treat that hole. You will just die, mostly. I'm pretty sure most of the people who got wounded by a gunshot wound or a cannonball died in the battlefield.
King General to die in combat during the US Civil War. Command fell to General Beauregard, who was at the rear and unable to assess the battle. Beauregard opted to continue to assault the Hornet's Nest instead of bypassing it and attacking the rest of the Union forces, leaving the nest surrounded to be mopped up later. The Hornet's Nest did eventually fall, and while it was a tactical victory on the battlefield for the Confederates, the time and manpower expended by the Confederate Army gave Grant's men time to fall back and establish new defensive positions outside of Pittsburgh Landing. These positions were anchored by the Tennessee River to the east, were well...
Oh no, now they have the gunboats also, which means extra cannons. This is a very strong addition to the Union's army. This is the last chance for the Confederacy to attack from the sides, destroy the half of the army and then pull back to not get attacked by the gunboats. They would just render the Union army useless if their only half is left, but they don't do it. They just want to die and just go straight forward. I'm sorry I'm bitching so much about the straightforward attacks. I'm just getting so fed up with them.
Set up and supported by 50 cannons as well as the gunboats on the river. Beauregard's attacks on the Hornet's Nest had resulted in the Union forces being entrenched along the river instead of being driven westward into the swampy ground.
They have trenches now. How can you attack trenches? It was hard during the Second World War when they had machine guns and artillery. Now they don't have machine guns and they cannot bomb from up above. How are they going to take to the trenches? Impossible.
General Grant was at Savannah, Tennessee when the fighting began, approximately 16 kilometers away from the battlefield. He was recovering from a fall from a horse, and upon hearing the artillery, began giving orders, including that General Nelson move his troops from Savannah down the east side of the river to reserve positions opposite Pittsburgh Landing. Grant then proceeded himself downriver to Crump's Landing to direct General Wallace to move his troops to the western side of the battlefield in support of General Sherman around Shiloh Church. General Wallace, due to confusion and lack of clarity in the orders given to him, was slowly bringing his troops down the Shunpike instead of the...
See, it's because of the confusion he was behind the enemy, but if he was there directly to attack them from behind, even with 10 times smaller force, surprise or attack, he could have just destroyed the artillery and then run away. Hit and run, destroy the artillery. You make a massive blow, even a moral blow to the enemy, and you don't lose much men. Why don't they do it? Maybe they will.
River road. If he had not been found and redirected by mid-afternoon...
Found and redirected. No. Found and said, go, attack them from behind, destroy, search and destroy. That's the mission.
His troops would have been behind the Confederate troops, who had advanced past Shiloh Church by that time. He was forced to reverse march his troops to maintain order and then move to the river road, where his troops could march down to join the Union lines. His troops would not reach the battlefield until 7 p.m. that evening, as the fighting for the day concluded. In addition to the arrival of these troops, the 15,000 of General Buell's Army of the Ohio began to arrive during the night of the 6th.
Okay, now the Confederates are way outnumbered.
As night fell, the leadership on both sides felt confident in their respective positions. General Beauregard, remaining at Shiloh Church and ignoring intelligence reports that indicated Union reinforcements had arrived, felt he had merely a mopping-up operation left on his hands. Confederate troops were now occupying and setting up in Prentice's and Sherman's camps from the previous days, but their time and focus was spent on finding food and shelter instead of resupplying ammunition and establishing defensive positions. A thunderstorm swept through the area during late evening, making for a miserable night for all troops. By the morning, approximately 20,000 Confederates were heavily outnumbered by a reinforced Union army numbering approximately 45,000 men.
45,000 against 20,000, and the 20,000 is the attacking side. This is impossible. This battle is impossible to win unless you're Robert E. Lee. They need Lee here. Where's Lee? He could do the thing.
As early as 5:30 a.m., Union forces began to advance, led by Wallace's fresh troops set up on the western edge of the line. The Confederate army was at this point more a mass of troops than a cohesive force, with unit organization all but non-existent. It took until mid-morning for the CSA line to stabilize, although they remained under heavy pressure and continued to fall back as the day progressed. By late morning, the area of the Hornet's nest had been recaptured, only to become the renewed focus of counterattacks from CSA troops led by General Breckinridge. Despite local success, continued attacks by Union troops forced the line back, and the Hornet's Nest was firmly recaptured, with the line extending parallel to the Hamburg-Purdy Road in the area between the Hornet's Nest and Shiloh Church. Beauregard assessed his situation, and in the face of more than 10,000 casualties, came to the conclusion that he could no longer achieve victory. By late in the afternoon, he began an ordered withdrawal southwards.
So you see that you have less men, you see that you're losing, you need to change tactics, you need to change strategies. Why don't they? Because they don't have it in them, they haven't learned it, they have only learned this tactics in the school and in their own experience. I don't know what's going on in the minds of these generals. Is it the dishonor that they don't want to use superior tactics, obviously? I don't know why.
Back towards Corinth. They were pursued by a small number of Union troops led by General Wallace, but little support was provided from the rest of the army, now exhausted after 2 days of fighting, and the pursuit forces fell back northwards into their own lines. With the conclusion of the fighting on April 7th, the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, as the Union called it, or the Battle of Shiloh as it came to be known, drew to a close. Union forces had not only prevailed on the field of battle, but continued to hold the strategic initiative in the western theatre of the war. Although General Grant was removed from overall command of the Army of the Tennessee for his failings to create proper defensive positions for his troops on the
He was removed for that? He was the most successful general on the side of the Union. Who removed him?
eve of battle, his disposition of troops once battle began allowed him to remain as its second-in-command under Halleck. General Beauregard remained in control of the Army of Mississippi, only to be relieved of its command after losing again to Union forces at the Siege of Corinth later in 1862. Overall, the Union victory at Shiloh allowed them to continue further operations in Tennessee and Mississippi, leading to the fall both of Memphis and later of Vicksburg, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River and splitting the Confederacy in half. Confederate casualties of 10,699 men and Union casualties of 13,047 men made the two-day battle.
Union lost more men. Almost in any battle in Civil War, Union loses more men because they are the attacking sides in the end. And attackers always lose more men. They had more men to begin with. But yeah, the numbers are really big. It's not a small battle, it's a very big battle. I thought it's like this small battle no one talks about, but I just haven't heard much about it. It's quite huge numbers.
The bloodiest battle in American history up to that point. Hope of a quick, decisive victory for either side faded as the bloody war of attrition set in.
Whoa, damn. Another day, another battle. I figure how many of these battles do we have left in the Civil War? I want to see more. But I don't know if there are good videos. There are of course these bad videos and old documentaries. I don't want to see them. I want to only see the good ones, the new ones that are fast and quick. This topic is interesting as hell, man. I like it. And I love to bitch about how their tactics were inferior to nowadays tactics or the tactics of the Mongols. I will talk about it so much more that you will get pissed off about it. Yeah, I apologize in advance. My friends, if you like my content, please support the channel, become a patron, link is in the description below. Also, go and get the cup. Many people have gotten it, go and get it also. It will never break, it's an unbreakable cup. And as always my friends, until my next video, stay cool and bye bye.